All right. So give me the 90-second version. You joined the family business, ITE, back in the
Mm-hmm.
early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
You left in 99. You
Mm-hmm.
spent 15 minutes
Wow.
basically turning other people's businesses around, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were at Expo Media,
Mm-hmm.
I2I, Inside Essential.
Yeah.
And then in 2017, you come back to the family business.
Yeah.
So now it's a public company.
Mm-hmm.
What's the thread from starting with the family, ending with the family, and what is the thing you're good at that made you the one to come back and basically rebuild?
Wow. Okay. 90 seconds.
You can have 2 minutes if you
Okay. Well,
want.
that's very kind of you. Look, I really enjoy looking at trends, seeing where the things are going, where the world is going, where businesses are going, and then really going into businesses. Well, first of all, legacy IT. We actually started that. It was literally my dad, my uncle, myself. So we were a kid. I was the kid. But that was just building something up and following a trend that was going, through the roof at the time in the early 90s, which was globalization. And then coming into other businesses, whether Expo Media, we started from scratch, but legacy, but I2I, which was essential, that was just a sleeping giant, had been massively impacted through COVID. But coming into what was then was the largest event organizer in the UK, was a real challenge, and it was a lot of fun to go into something that, was a sleeping giant, turn it around, apply a lot of the things that I learned from the early days, but also looking at where the trends were going. And it was just a bigger canvas in which to be able to see if a large number of the things that I wanted to achieve in terms of the trends would work in a bigger business. And it did. I mean, I2I was, like, I believe it was very successful at the time. And then that led me to come back to here, what was the legacy of IT that needed an enormous reinvention. Um, and that's that. So coming back was actually quite an easy decision. It was part of it was romanticism, but the reality was it was a big enough business. It was one of the largest organizers in the world, but it was all about emerging markets. So therefore, it was big enough to be able to afford a massive reinvention. Um, and so that's why I did it.
So when you came back to IT, did you know that this strategy you've been executing was the strategy you were going to play out, or was that not the plan originally when you started back there?
No, it was very different. So when we started at Legacy IT, it was genuinely because the world was a completely different place, right? So today we all talk about sort of disruption through
Mhm.
technology. But my dad's era and the start of my career was all the disruption was geopolitical,
Right.
right? So these were, and his track record was he was, learned the trade from my father, but he very much was one of the first to always go into new countries as they opened up. So he went to the Middle East in the 70s, but he was the first to go in China, right? In 1980, built up a business, then sold it, all trade fairs, always the events industry. But the early 90s, and that's why I as a kid out of college, I joined them because Eastern Europe was opening up, right? So the strategy then was very much, here's globalization, here is all these incredible markets. Remember, no, I mean, it's a bit before your time, but these countries you couldn't go to. It was a whole different
It
world
was the
then.
Soviet Union.
Yeah, it was the Soviet Union, and all of Eastern Europe was completely closed. So going in there, and my I was 21, 22. I mean, it was unbelievably exciting. So no, that then the strategy was very much, here are these geographies opening up. All these geographies, enormous amounts of Western companies want to have access to these countries, and that one of the best ways to enter into any new market is through a trade fair. So we were just at the right place at the right time. My dad, obviously had enormous amounts of experience of how to operate in these types of countries, and it was a wonderful period of history in general. And I was very lucky enough to be part of that, right? But that was the strategy then. It was all about emerging markets. How do you open up these new markets? How do you go into every single industry sector that you could go into? And that's what we did. We went from motor shows to construction shows to travel and tourism to security to, you name it. We covered every industry sector, built up the main event of its kind very quickly in those local market, or Russia or Moscow, but then we geocloned it very, very fast. And we were one of the first to do geoclone at scale in those days. It was all organic. We went from 0 to about 80 trade events in the space of 5-6 years, all organic. 3 of us to about 700 people. So it was a very different strategy because that was the appropriate
Right.
strategy at the time. What we're doing today, when I came back in 2017, was pretty much the exact opposite, right? It's a very different strategy. But I'm sure we can go into
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So it's almost as if you sort of tracked, if you think about it, IT starts early 90s, Soviet Union collapses, the rise of globalization.
Yep.
ITE, you come back, a year after Donald Trump wins the election, which is
Yeah.
sort of a pushback on globalization and this argument, a bit more of a nationalistic approach
Yeah.
or an internal approach. And that strategy doesn't work anymore. So you walk in, you guys are running nearly 300 shows a year,
Yes.
right? It's heavily weighted to Russia and the former Soviet republics.
Yes.
Now, when everyone talks about this story, they talk about how you cut like 200 plus shows,
Hmm.
you significantly reduced what you were doing, but you had a lot of probably revenue on the books that you had to basically say, we're going to give this up and make a totally different shift. And you're a public company at the
Yes.
same time. So, how did you underwrite that? Like, what gave you the conviction as a public company CEO
Yeah.
to make that shift that really was fundamentally different
Yeah.
than what had been going on for
Yeah.
20 years?
Well, yeah, it was pretty hard, especially being public company. But this was also all the shareholders of that public company were all emerging market funds,
Mhm.
right? So for 20 years, it had been a terrific investment for most people because it gave them access to countries like Russia
Right.
without having been not having to go to Russia. So that bit was actually probably the hardest bit, was convincing shareholders that this was the right approach. But you say 2016 and Donald Trump. I mean, the reality is that this all really started post the financial crisis,
Okay.
right? So it really started the first inklings of the trend of the what was the deglobalization or fragmentation really started around financial crisis, right? So Russia first invaded Ukraine. People sort of tend to forget that was around 2014.
Mhm.
But there was lots of things going on. It wasn't just that. I mean, Brexit happened in 2016. You saw it more and more around the world. Yes, of course, 2016 with America first, but then the emergence of China over the last, 20 years as a major global superpower, the Belt and Road Initiative. So there was huge, all the signs were there. And so what helped when I came back was that, what's the expression? Necessity is the mother of invention. I
Uh-huh.
mean, so Russia had invaded Ukraine um, for the first time. It was pretty clear that the company had been set up to really just go for those type of emerging markets, but nothing else, right? Meaning that they had managed actually through that crisis quite well, but revenues were going down, profits were going up, right? That means you're cutting the life out of the business. And so the company needed a new strategy. It needed a new um, a new direction. So in a way that helps, right? Had it been remarkably successful and everything was going incredibly well, then it's probably harder to do it. But yeah, so that's it. So I came in, um, hopefully, and time has shown that was the right thing to do. But it was to say, look, here are the signs of why emerging markets are not necessarily the right place to be as an only strategy. Two, it wasn't just that; it was also just the world of events as in general, right? So which we're living at today. So a lot of the trends started from financial crisis. I mean, the second one was more and more spend from marketing budgets are going towards the main event of its kind.
Mhm.
It's pretty clear, right? I mean, every statistic will show you that the more and more spend is going, and this has been like 15 years, 20 years of that happening, and then massively advanced since COVID. So you could see that happening, that more spend going into the main event, less in the second, third, fourth tier shows. So if you're going to transform something, you really should transform it. You normally only get one chance at
Right.
this, right? So we looked at a lot of the different trends. We were very lucky that I had that experience at Eye2Eye, which became Essential Events, because that's where we practiced a lot of these things. I went for the main event approach. That's what we did. EMAP was also 300 shows, and we whittled that right down. And we effectively, that was the trial case, and it worked very well. Then there was a new type of event, which I'm sure we'll talk about, which is the shows like health and shop talk. That only really emerged about 15 years ago. So a lot of the trends we looked at, and we applied it to what was legacy ITE, and brought the shareholders on the way. We couldn't do it all in one go. We had to do it step by step. We didn't just close shows. We sold,
Mhm.
where we could, we sold. And really that was the strategy, is to say, here are all these incredible emerging market businesses, because that's what they were, right? They're very domestic. So the shows in Russia covered multiple different sectors, as did the ones in India, in China, in Southeast Asia, in Turkey, and so on. And our role in our plan was, let's improve the operational performance of each one of these emerging market businesses and then sell them.
Right.
And that's basically what we did. So we improved it. We went back in, we improved the shows, we invested, to be fair. They had been starved of investment for a number of years. And every time we did that, we then would sell it. and then use that money coming in to then go for our real strategy, which is obviously where Hive is today.
So you've talked about how you want to have the top show
Mm.
in whatever industry. Like that
Mhm.
is how you win the financial show or the economic show. The money is flowing to the top show. Health, shop talk, like that. Your thesis is those are the top shows. How do you define that? How do you define that that is in fact the top show?
Well, yeah. So step back. I should have said is it's actually more about the end market, right? So
Okay.
what's the vertical? So choose the vertical first, right? That for us is the most important thing about our business, and I have to say, I think that what also massively differentiates us. Okay, we are not just a big portfolio. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with others. It's just a lot of other people are very large portfolio plays. Yeah, they're looking for market share by geography in order to get their scale. We're very much the opposite. We focus on the end market. What's the vertical? Then what's the main event of its kind in that sector? Or what's the one that's up and coming that has a very good opportunity to become the number one? So that's how we do it. How do we decide if it's the number one? Well, it's scale, customer retention, customer advocacy. What is the right ratio between who are the key core buyers and the rest of the delegates that are coming? If it is that ecosystem type show, so there's lots of different layers in which to look at what's the right event, but it's usually the scale. I mean,
Do you have a methodology for determining what is the right end market to move into?
we will do a lot of work around it in terms of understanding where the trajectory of that end market is going. Obviously, there's myriad of different studies that will show you and strategy documents that will say to you, look at e-commerce, for
Right.
example, it's only going to go up. If you look at all of our sectors, it's not like we're geniuses, yeah, in that sense.
Pretty simple.
These are pretty, logical. If you're going to go into healthcare, one in every $5 in America goes towards healthcare. But remember, it's not just, we also then look at the disruptive side of the show, meaning that we really focus on the end markets that are being disrupted through technology, and then we use that, and then that's the type of event that we buy into, right? So when you look at Shop Talk, for example, Shop Talk is a retail event, right? But it's very much on the e-commerce side or retail tech side of retail. If you look at healthcare, we wanted to be in healthcare, but it's very much the digital innovation of healthcare, which is health. If you look at Possible, which is the marketing show, right? It's for CMOs, but it's very much the way that the digital marketing is affecting that sector, and then it's the ecosystem event where marketing is going. So that's what we focus on.
So you joined in 2017 or
Yes.
rejoined 2019, kind of your first big, this new strategy is the strategy with the acquisition of Shop Talk.
Yes.
145 million, and based off what my research was,
It was
it's
a public company, so it was
right.
public knowledge then.
Uh,
Yes.
you said what struck you about Shop Talk was that it was run like a media brand, editor driven, content led, not a floor space business.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means we don't sell square meters, right? So traditional trade fairs, which is correct, that's what they do. They focus on they make the vast majority of their money through the selling of floor space. We don't. I wouldn't even know how many square meters or square feet Shop Talk is. I don't think about it like
Mhm.
that. We look at it much more as it is an ecosystem event, right? And what does that mean? It's a level of a seniority where you're talking 50 to 60% plus or either VP or CEO. I mean, it's incredibly senior. And it is very content driven. And a lot of people will say that. But it is the heads of those businesses that come to speak at Shop Talk because they're there to talk about what is the future of retail or what is the future of e-commerce within retail. And it's also where people will come to launch events or launch new products. When the CEO of Uber came, he came to launch Uber Eats, right? I mean, it's a whole different
Mhm.
ballgame. When you come to health, you'll have the CEO of Johnson and Johnson. We had Jill Biden, the president's wife at the time, come to launch an initiative for women's health. She'll do that at health. That's the level of content. We don't do pay to play. You can't pay to speak. Yeah, it's a whole different. It's just a different type of event. Yeah. So that's why we look at it more as it's not about the square footage of the event, because that is absolutely the right way to look at things as a trade fair. These aren't trade fairs. Not we have a mix of different types of products within our business.
So what do you call your shows?
We call them, well, first of all, we do run some trade
Of
fairs
course.
and they're terrific. But we call the shows like Shop Talk and Health and so on. We call them large scale ecosystem events. That's what we call them.
So you buy Shop Talk, the bulk of the business is still these emerging market, perhaps not even
Mhm.
emerging anymore, say, 20 years later, but
Well, that's true. Yes.
more of emerged market events. What are things that you took from Shop Talk at the time and started to roll into the rest of Hive, even before you got rid of the entire emerging market business?
Um, Not much is the answer. So
By choice or by
by
resistance from the
choice, it's
team?
completely different types of
Yeah.
products. So what we did, it's more the other way around, right? So what we did and what we put in place in terms of some of the emerging market businesses was things that we had trialed out at what was Eye to Eye and became Essential Events, which is much more, which is an approach, which is what we call effectively, it's like a centralized operating rhythm of the business, right? What does that mean? If you look at most traditional organizers, they are massively decentralized. Yeah. Legacy IT was
Mhm.
massively decentralized. Legacy, before I2I, it was called EMAP. Legacy EMAP were completely decentralized. What does that mean? That basically means that every single geography and every show within that geography, they run completely independently of each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I call it recreating the wheel. I've been doing this since I went to my first show when I was 8 years old. I've been doing this a long time. I think that's very, very old fashioned thinking. I think it worked for a period of time when the world was so different. It isn't now. Doesn't matter if you're in China, Russia, America, or Germany, you want the same level of service wherever you are. Yeah. So I think, so we believe very strongly in effectively centralization of best practice. Yeah. So that's what we put into the emerging markets businesses, which is your approach on sales, your approach on marketing, your approach on strategic thinking around the show, the timing of it, your rebook process, everything to do with the operating part of a business. We believe there is a best practice. Yeah. Constantly updated, constantly learning from it, and constantly rolling it out. So we had done that with the emerging markets businesses, which, to be fair, we believe very strongly in now at Hive. We also do that into shows like Shop Talk. Quid pro quo, if there are things that we can learn from these amazing brands like Shop Talk, then we will roll it out to the rest of the business. But it's not appropriate for the emerging market side because that was very much trade fairs.
So you've sort of described the model as closer to almost retail media,
Hmm.
right? Which is sort of like a closed loop. You know exactly who's in the room. You're
Yep.
not worrying about square footage. You're worrying about the meetings, which,
Meetings,
you know,
what we call the gold dust. Yes.
right. When did the first party data become the product rather than the byproduct of running a show?
Okay, so for events like Shop Talk, that type of large scale ecosystem, health, possible, manifest, the data, we actually don't actually really call it data. We call it the focus on the gold dust, which is who are the most important people, who are the key buyers of that particular industry sector that have to be in the room. That's what we really focus on. We also focus on the stardust, right? The stardust meaning who are the leading thought leadership heads for that particular sector, so that they are coming and they're invited and they want to come to speak to either, like I said, launch new products or just literally share thought leadership for
Mhm.
where they think that sector is going. So we really focus on those two. Yeah, that's what drives everything else. That's what drives why people want to take stands or they want to have the ability to show new products at the show. That's what drives the other delegates that comes. That's what drives the media to come to listen to it. So it's sort of a self-perpetuating loop that goes round. But we really focus on those two things in particular. And if you get those two things, then the rest follow. Yeah.
All right. So my last question about your public days before you finally take the business private.
Yeah.
So you joined in 2017, 2019, you buy Shop Talk, and then a year later, you're hit by the single greatest
Oh,
pandemic
yeah.
that we have had since the early
Yeah.
1900s. And then a year after that, or maybe 2 years after that, Russia decides to invade
Yeah.
Ukraine a second time, and you've still got assets
Yeah.
over there. So I'm going to suspect you had a huge head of hair and it was totally blonde and all that before that happened. Um,
That's great.
Talk a little bit about those times and some of the existentialism you might have been feeling as the CEO of this business when not only are you getting hit by a pandemic that makes being in person impossible,
Yeah.
but then you've got an area you're still pretty heavily
Mhm.
invested in, one country invading another.
Yeah. Okay. So you make me relive it.
Yeah.
Well, I remember standing in front of everybody. So we do town halls. I'm sure lots of people do. But we had just entered in the UK public market is the FTSE 250.
Mhm.
So we had just entered the FTSE 250. So it means we were obviously one of the larger 250 companies in on the FTSE. We had just been valued at more than £1 billion. I remember standing in front of everybody saying, congratulations, we made it to 250. Now let's keep going, and so on and so on. And then 2 weeks later was COVID.
Yep.
So that was a humbling moment. But look, it affected everybody. So take you through those days. One of the lessons that when you grow up in terms of your career in emerging markets, you get used to crisis,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, micro shock after micro shock after micro shock. Now, granted, this was a massive shock, okay, but you do get used to crisis. And not that every crisis is the same, but they do have the same characteristics, right? Which is, the first is you've got to protect your business. I know it's obvious, right? But you've got to, which is what we did, right? You have to raise money. I mean, it is the most important thing, is like, do you have enough money to be able to survive, protect your business and survive? If you're going to have to do hard things and make difficult decisions, do it very quickly. Don't do a death of 1,000 cuts. And then realize that, and the first mentality is, and this is what most people make the mistake of, is that whenever a crisis starts, it always gets worse before it gets better. And you have to plan for it getting worse. However, you also have to plan that at some point it will be over, right? And that's what you learn from emerging markets. I mean, I was very lucky to learn a lot of those hard lessons earlier. And that's what we approached with them, was called ITE. So we planned for the worst. We raised money. We did what's called a rescue rights issue on the public market. We were the first to do it. We did it within 6 weeks of COVID hitting. We raised a lot of money. We were blessed that we had insurance, but at the time, our auditors wouldn't recognize that. That's why we had to raise the money. We made very difficult decisions, but did it very early. We did everything to protect the business and the relationship with the customers, because we knew that it would come back, right? And then because we did it so quickly, that meant that we could actually then get on with the business, right? Which was, carrying on the strategy, which was exiting large number of the different parts of the world and getting ready for when the world would be open, and bringing in some great businesses. So I'm trying to I know it's making it sound all so easy, but everybody lived it. So everybody had their own thing. But that's how we approached it. And it, obviously it worked. It worked for a lot of people.
So in February 2022, Russia invades Ukraine.
Oh yeah, then that was.
I'm
Yes.
sure that's another.
So just as we're getting over,
You're getting over
coming
COVID.
back.
You're like, cool, we're ready to go, and then great, we have another issue.
Yes.
You make the decision to sell.
We had to.
Everything.
We had to. It was the right thing to do. We had to.
But how do you sell assets in a country that nobody wants to do business with? Like, how did that work?
Well, okay, but so again, we knew when they went back in, that was, so again, always thinking it's only going to get worse before it gets better.
Right, that was it.
People were trying to say to us at the time, especially some shareholders, were saying, "Why are you doing this? It's going to be over in a week or two." And we're like, "No, it's not."
Like the Crimean instance.
And to be fair, I never thought it would take, what has it been, well over 4 years now, but it never was going to take a few weeks. Okay. So then you have, obviously we have a responsibility for shareholders to get them some form of return. But two, we also, these are good friends and colleagues that worked in Moscow and Russia, and they still are, right? These are people who have been incredibly hardworking for the company. It's not their fault what's happened. So we wanted to make sure that they had the right home. And then we just worked incredibly hard to find the right, effectively buyer for the business. Again, we moved very fast. We did it all within 6 weeks. We haven't happened in 6 weeks, but anyway, it was all done within 6 weeks. I think there was a veneer at the top that a lot of people did think that this would be over quicker. Therefore, we were able to move faster and get the right home for the business, and also, get a return for it. So that's making it sound a lot simpler than it was, but that's how we did it.
But the plan was always to sell these assets at some point.
The plan was always to sell it.
So to some extent, a bit of a Churchillian, never let a good crisis go wasted. Here's this opportunity. Let's finally speed up the transition to Hyve.
100%. And we did that with Central Asia too. These are terrific businesses, all in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan. We sold all of them.
So 2023.
Yes.
Hyve takes you guys go private with Providence and Searchlight at a £524 million enterprise value, which is half of what you were 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. From a valuation perspective. But again, you're still coming out of the pandemic. You're still kind of coming out of the Russia invasion. It was on a 22x EBITDA multiple, which is a very premium multiple for an events business. Now, recognizing, again, we're coming out of the pandemic. What did you, Providence and Searchlight, see that made that sort of a multiple comfortable for everybody?
Mm.
And what is the pressure you felt knowing that it was a premium multiple that you're going to have to deliver? Like, talk a little bit about that whole go private process.
Well, first of all, I think we can't take a lot of. I mean, a lot of the credit also has to come from Providence Searchlight, right? So Providence knew that and does know this sector very well. They obviously are one of the shareholders of closest still, and they still are. So they understood what was happening with face-to-face events in totality, right? They knew it was coming back because they were seeing it anyway from their other business. So I think the multiple is somewhat of a. It's I don't know if the multiple really reflected the reality, meaning they knew we all knew it was coming back.
Hmm.
You didn't know how it was going to come back fully. So the multiple is a little bit of a distraction,
Okay.
right? Because it was also based on well, 22 was such a bad year.
Yeah.
It was just coming back. So it was more about what was happening that year in 23 and the potential trajectory of the business. So I would say it's less about the multiple of 22. But what it was much more about was the conviction of the market, of the sector, and our position within it, right? Do we have the right types of products that will benefit coming out of COVID? Or is it the type of business or type of events that actually will not recover properly? And so they had conviction because of closer still. They then had, obviously, they did their due diligence. They had convictions on the events that we owned. Um, and so that's why they backed it. And then Searchlight also had been looking at this sector for some time, and then they teamed up and came in and took us private.
Some people might say that having a private equity owner is a little difficult. You had two.
Yeah, indeed.
What is it from a board perspective? How does that sort of work out where you've got two different PE owners with two different groups of LPs? Like, you have to manage kind of both of them. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, look, like everything. We need you need a bit of time to get your sort of operating rhythm to work together. But for us, it was much more the difference between being public and then private.
Hmm.
That was probably more of an adjustment than it was working with two PE houses. Because to be fair, and they still are actually very aligned. So we actually never really had an issue about it. Wasn't like two distinct, and they both had different opinions about what to do. They both came in with their eyes open in terms of what we wanted to achieve with the company, what direction do we want to go in, what type of events we wanted to buy. We didn't want to buy traditional portfolios. We look at the run we've been on, right?
Hmm.
They came in completely with their eyes open. And then what we did was we put together what has become Go 27, which was bring them on board to a value creation plan in order to ensure the alignment between all of the parties. And that really was what helped enormously. So
You
if
mean
anybody's listening that's about to go into PE, I highly recommend do the value creation plan, make sure they're on board, that you get complete alignment, and then you have a plan.
you might need to rebrand it to Go 26 because you
Good
you
kind.
technically hit your goal a year
Yeah, we did.
early.
Yeah.
So over 6 weeks, three massive events deals
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Was the plan to sell this year, or was this a bit more of an
No.
opportunistic thing that presented itself?
No, no. Look, there was no set time when it was going to be sold, but it was more likely next year
Hmm.
than it was this year. That's for sure. So
Right.
it was not a conscious decision made by shareholders or anybody that we should exit now. Um, uh, I think it's just Hellman and Freeman came in. They're one of the larger PE firms in the world. Their philosophy is not to go into processes. So if they have a lot of conviction over a particular business or sector and then the business within it, then they would rather preempt. And that's basically what's happened.
And so they just from the start, it was basically you and them talking this through, and it worked out, and the deal gets done.
Uh, Not quite as simple as that. They had been looking at this sector for a good year,
Okay.
as are many PE.
Of
I mean,
course.
like a lot of PE is now like this sector is sort of waking up a bit in
Yeah.
terms of private equity. It used to be a core group of PE that would always be present. Now it's widening, and I'm sure we'll
We've got
talk about that.
Apollo with
You got
Emerald.
Apollo, you've got KKR. You've got a
Yeah.
lot of more people looking at this sector than ever before. So Hellman and Freeman were looking at this sector. And so I know, I mean, they did a lot of research on the market, on the sector, who they believed would be the winner coming out. And so they got huge conviction about the industry itself, in particular because of what's happening with AI. They're huge conviction in terms of face to face. And then they got a very similar philosophy to us, right? Like if you think how we look at our what we buy, we'll choose what we talked about earlier. You choose the end market, the vertical, then who's the player or who's the event that's going to become is the number one or will become the number one. That's how they think of things. They don't want huge portfolio of businesses to own. However, they're still literally one of the biggest PE firms in the world, but they will go in one sector who's going to be what they call category killer. That's what they call it. Who's going to be the number one, and then they'll back it in a very big way. So look, we're obviously thrilled. Very, very, very appreciative and grateful for what Searchlight and Providence did and have done and have backed us for. And now we're excited. Well, we're very pleased we got them a really good return. And now it's about Hellman and Freeman when we finally complete.
You did your job.
Yeah. Do it all again now.
Yes, you do. And the pressure's even higher now. Bigger number. So how long from start to finish did it take when they came to you and said, we're interested, to signing on the dotted line?
But well, I can't speak for them how long they've been looking at it.
No, but
when they first approached the business, it probably took about 2 or 3 months.
Wow, this deal's happened fast.
It was very fast.
I've heard similar about the Apollo and QuestX Emerald deal, that came together very quickly, and I think Closer Still was only in market for maybe 3 months.
Yeah, they did a formal process, so that always takes a bit longer. Yeah, not because of it's just when it's a formal process, it just always takes longer.
Yeah,
yeah.
So they bought the business, reported 100 million plus in EBITDA.
That was last year.
That was last year. Can you confirm what EBITDA was last year?
Yeah, no, we've been public about it. So it's 100 million EBITDA.
Just flat 100 million.
Yeah.
Plus or minus plus a little bit. You round down a little bit. So one of the reasons I think a lot of these PE firms are getting into this, and you kind of alluded to it, is, and I say it a little bit harsher, there is legitimate fear about AI. Even amongst these PE firms that have assets in software, they're very concerned about their SaaS products. And so I think they look at events as, well, it's definitely in person, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
How much of that fear do you think contributed to the price they were willing to pay? Do you think you got a premium on the valuation of Hyve because there was that inherent fear?
I don't think so. I think that gave them the conviction to do the deal and to enter into this sector. I don't think it contributed that much. I think the value was fair value for what the business is doing. We're consistently double-digit organic growth. We're consistently double-digit organic EBITDA growth with margin expansion every year. They're buying, a very, obviously I'm going to say this, right? But they're buying a very good business, right? I think I think the multiple that they paid was completely right. I think in the years to come, the multiples will go up, right? If the business is well positioned. Not every event business will.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I would say.
So how do you think about, you guys are already a mature business, but under a new PE owner, margin expansion, what is true mature margin for Hyve once the expansion occurs?
That's really good. So look, so our margin at the moment is under 30%, right? So we're actually lower than most businesses of scale. And that's because we have actually invested quite significantly in order to have the appropriate level of platform to do the best practice across the different parts of the events that we're buying. And also be in a position where when we bring in these incredible brands coming into the business, we can actually help to drive growth in them. In order to do that, you need to have a certain amount of central cost.
Right.
But as we scale, that central cost doesn't scale with the company. So you will see natural margin expansion. That's one. And two, the shows are obviously growing, right? We have a large number of events that we have brought into new markets, what I know the world calls geocloning, but we do them to scale. As you can imagine, right? You have a Shop Talk, you then have a Shop Talk Europe, you have Health, you have Health Europe, you now have Shop Talk Lux. We've just launched a whole host of new events into Europe and a few into America off the back of these great brands. So as those scale, your margin goes up.
So let's fast forward now. You've hit Go 27. No, sorry. Go 27.
Go 27 and 26.
Yes. You hit it a year early. Now you've got a new plan.
Yes.
Ascend 30.
Yes.
You guys like your plans with your names. All right. So the plan is, so Go 27 had a very crisp, quotable goal, more than double Hyve by 2027, and you hit it a year early.
Yeah.
What is the equivalent headline for Ascend 30?
It's pretty much the same thing.
So you're going to double the business. So revenue last year was what?
Last year was 400.
All right. So 400, 100 million in EBITDA. So your goal is by 2030 to be about 800 million. Is that pounds or dollars?
North dollars.
Dollars. 800 north of $800 million,
Yes.
north of 200 million in EBITDA because you're going to have
Yes.
margin expansion.
Yes.
Talk to me about how you get there.
Well, a significant proportion of it is organic. I mean, so 60% of the 60% of the goal is all organic, meaning the sectors in which we operate in have got quite we believe, and we've done a lot of work around it, that there's a lot of what we call end market expansion, right? So those shows themselves can grow, we believe, quite significantly. Two, we believe, and we're already doing it, is that they not only have growth potential in the events themselves that we have, but also then to bring it to other markets. So like I just touched on it before, right? We've just launched, obviously we have Shop Talk Full, Shop Talk Lux. We've now done Health Europe. We have Manifest Europe. We just launched FinTech Meetup Europe, Possible Europe. We've just launched Bet into USA. So there's a very significant organic growth lever, and that's roughly 60% of the plan. It's basically doing more of what we've already done, we believe, extremely well. We've proven that it works. We're just doing more of it. The other 40% will be driven through M&A.
So you are expanding through these sort of, the market calls it geocloning, right? You take Shop Talk Europe or
Yep.
Lux. You've talked about, you've said the United States a number of times. You've said Europe a number of times. You haven't said Asia at all.
Yeah.
Is there a play for Asia, or is the market too fragmented still over there to do something, or is China too large of an economy? And there's some experience there from your early days. Like, talk to me about that.
Okay, that's good. So, well, it's actually good you asked that, because when I said originally that emerging markets we're exiting, I also should be clear. We are exiting, and we have exited all those markets because they were all domestic shows.
Right.
Yeah, we've exited completely. That doesn't mean that we're not going to bring some of these global brands into those geographies. Yeah. So, for example, Shop Talk Lux is in Abu Dhabi. We've just launched Breakbulk as one of our trade fairs. It is by far the market leader in a very niche sector of transportation. But we do Breakbulk in Europe, in America, in Middle East. We've just launched it into Asia. It's going to be held this year in October, and that's in Singapore. So we have a plan that we will be bringing some of these products into those geographies. But it's all led by the customer, right? The reason why, we call them geographic expansions more than they are geocloning, because, it also comes back to why we are so heavily present in America now, is because the origination of most of these events are in America. Why? Because they're mostly tech-related shows, yeah? So when look, we have 33 events. Google participates in 24 of them, right? So most of these events, Health, Shop Talk, Manifest, Possible, Grocery Shop, FinTech Meetup, they all originate in America because the vast majority of the tech companies are here. Then it's up to those customers to say to us, well, we want expansion into another geography. We'll go do it. We have specialist team. We call it Global Ventures. That's led by Katie Fryatt, who has an unbelievable track record. Money 2020 Europe, Money 2020 Asia, Shop Talk Europe. The list is endless. She runs what's called Global Ventures, and that is a specialized group of people that know how to bring these amazing brands into new geographies without losing the very magic that made them special in the first place. So sorry, it's probably a long answer to your
it's
question.
great.
But no, we're very, very interested in Asia, if our customers are, which they are. So you will see us do more in Asia, but only with the brands.
So 60% comes from organic, 40% will come from M&A.
Broadly, yeah.
When you look at the Go 27, what percent came from organic?
It's a good question. It was broadly the same. Yes.
So
very high on organic growth.
Yeah.
Very high. And we've been consistently, this is our fourth year, because COVID,
Yeah.
So it's our fourth year in a row of proper double-digit organic growth. Obviously the growth has been even higher because of the acquisitions, but on true organic, it's been double-digit. And that is what we want to continue.
So in the announcement about the plan, there's 4 levers. We've talked a little bit about M&A. We've talked a little bit about geocloning, and we'll come back to those. But you also talk about core optimization and product extension. What does that mean?
So again, the way I suppose we're sort of going back to trends. You started talking about AI and COVID. Obviously, we talked a lot about, but what are the trends that are coming out of those, right? And how does that affect us? Because that has affected human behavior, right? So, for example, out of COVID has now, and it's very clear, and it's not going to go back. There is remote and hybrid working, right? Now, I know there was that before COVID, but now it really is.
Mhm.
Okay. So therefore, what's the trend that's come out of that is one, that's here to stay. Two, how does that affect a business like ours? Well, it affects our customers. Our customers would normally do, and this is the same for everybody, by the way. It's just I'm just saying in general that people would do sales trips from whatever it is, Miami to New York, and go see their customers, and they would try and see all their customers in one day. That's what used to happen. COVID, remote working, hybrid working means that that is not possible anymore
Right.
because people are not in the office. So what would normally used to take maybe one day might now take 3 or 4 or 5 days. Therefore, the return on that investment and that time is gone down the toilet. So therefore, people need access to their customers in one place at one time. Yeah. So that's a big shift. The second is then you come back to AI. Of course, AI is going to affect every industry one way or another. But if you also look at how it actually changes human behavior, you just don't know what's real anymore, right? I mean, you just don't know.
You don't.
I mean, our content, and the same with everybody, I'm not just saying it's Hive is so special. If you look at most content sessions pre-COVID, coming out of COVID, and now based on AI, all content sessions have gone up. One,
Mhm.
because obviously they want to learn about what the hell to do. But two, they want to know what's real,
Yep.
right? So if you add all those trends and the way that we look at things, we are involved in effectively what we call super verticals. That's the terminology we have. So we really focus on the end market. We focus on then the main event within that end market. Within that end market, we believe, well, we know, an incredibly high percentage of key buyers that come to it, the gold dust. So if you then add all the trends of COVID, I mean, meaning hybrid working, remote working, the trends of AI, what's real, what you're seeing more and more of is that people want to, and effectively these are ecosystem events. They want that ecosystem, but at multiple points throughout the year. That's what we mean by product extensions. So we have product extensions that we do within the event itself, which is the meetings program, the peer-to-peer networking, products like that. But then they want them throughout the year, and we're doing dinners throughout the year. We're doing leadership retreats throughout the year. We're doing anything that will keep that community together. We will monetize and bring people together throughout the year, and that is what we mean by effectively product extensions. So we've got different types of products that we do. That's why, just the other day, we announced that we bought something called Virtuosity League.
Mhm.
It's an incredible business led by Nadine, where she brings together CMOs throughout the year through dinners, through leadership engagement, through retreats. That's another service that we can offer. So if you look at each vertical, super vertical that we're in, we want to be able to do all these different types of products throughout the year for them. And that's what's driving that organic growth.
So in the announcement about Ascend 30, there's a lot of talk about non-events revenue, potentially non-events, right? With subscriptions,
Yep.
intelligence, membership.
Yep.
What does that look like?
That's broadly what I was touching on
Okay.
then. So there are effectively three different things. So one is brokerage, which is a business that we bought in the healthcare sector called HGAN. It's a Health Growth Advisory Network, and effectively what they're doing is taking the connections, meaning that they have access to all the chief medical officers, chief benefit officers. That's the gold dust
Mhm.
for the medical industry. And they will have solution companies come to them and say, we want access to those people. And can you help facilitate the meetings, help us shape the presentations, and actually help us to get into all these different types of the gold dust?
And that's outside of
That's
the show.
outside of the show.
Oh, wow.
All right. So HGAN will do that throughout the year. They do 50 meetings per customer throughout the year. And it is a brilliant business. We call that brokerage. Yeah.
And how do you price for something like that?
The,
Is it a price per meeting? Like, how do you?
It's really good. So they pay a fee
Okay.
for a year's worth of meetings,
And you
basically.
guarantee a X
Yeah,
number.
yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
HCAN does. And then they help facilitate the meeting, and then actually they do actually get a percentage of whatever is signed. But that's something that's particular for HCAN. as we go forward and as we bring that brokerage product into other industry sectors, it'll probably be less about that. It'll be more about, you sign up for a year's worth of X amount of meetings. And that's really interesting. It's incredibly popular. And it's what more people want. Yeah. Again, how do you get access into that gold dust? How do you get access into that type of buyer? The chief benefit officer of Target, for example. These are really hard people to get to meet. HGAN has built an enormous amount of trust that head of a benefit officer from Target knows that the people that they're introducing them to are the right type of people for a particular type of service that they might want.
Mhm.
So that's really interesting. And so that's one thing. So it's brokerage. We will be looking to do brokerage across all of our super verticals. Then you'll have the dinners. We have something called Entree, which also we launched within the healthcare sector, where we'll be running anywhere between 50 and 100 dinners this year. This is the sort of trial year. Next year, we'll probably be doing 200 dinners, where again, it's the same principle, where companies will look to us and say, can you, in whatever city, can you provide this number of gold dust for us to be able to present to and engage with, and it's peer-to-peer networking and so on and so on. And we'll be doing that throughout the year. We do them at Shop Talk already, but during the show itself, we'll organize 10 dinners during the show. But then we'll be doing that throughout the year. And then you've got also what Virtuosity League does, which is the dinners too. They call it Dinner with Friends, specifically for CMOs. And she'll run a whole host of them. She does very, very senior level retreats throughout the year. And she'll also do leadership programs, which is for the layer underneath the CMOs, effectively training programs for that level of marketer, in order to help them to one day become the CMO. So these are all the different types of products that we're doing, which again, we have a centralized operating model. As and when we bring that capability in, we'll then want to roll that out across those super verticals. That's what I mean.
So by 2030,
Yes.
if you look at a pie chart of your revenue and you look at like shows as one and all these other things that you're kind of scaling up as the other, how will you know what pie percent chart would you want those two to be?
Well, the majority will still always be events.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're event first. Right. So, and that's, the reality is right now, 80% of our revenue is all event first. 20% is what we call tech-enabled revenue, which is largely the meetings program and that type of product.
That's
The
still
ones that
within.
we talked about.
Oh, not the
But
ones at the
that's
show.
within. So
Okay.
some is within the show and then some is separate. But no, it's still the vast majority will be event first. I would have thought that will scale up the other side. I don't know the exact percentage, but it will still be, majority will still be event first.
So we've talked a little bit about geocloning, or you call geographic expansion. You have a ton of experience with this from the
Mhm.
ITE days, but now obviously a very different model because it's centralized
Very
versus a
different.
decentralized. What makes a geographic expansion work?
The brand is very important. Well, first of all, define what works. Okay. So for me, what works is getting it to it has to be a certain scale.
Of course.
Yeah. But so our industry, the events industry, somehow over the decades has sort of gone into what's the expression? Chuck it at the wall and see if it sticks.
Throw spaghetti at the wall. Yeah.
Okay. And I fundamentally disagree with that. Okay. Because what used to happen, and it's still, I think the ratio is roughly the same, is out of 10, 7 will get canceled and 3 will stick. I just don't. That works to a degree. It won't work with ours, right? If you do that to a Shop Talk, a Health, a Manifest, to a Possible, you can't do that.
You hurt your brand.
Because you destroy your brand. And that's why the industry has come up with geo-adapting, which is basically saying it's the brand, but it's not really the brand. We'll just make it localized. And I'm sure that works very well for them. For us, it's more about, you've got this show or this ecosystem of, let's just say, use Shop Talk as an example. That customer set, therefore the launch has to be of a certain scale. Yeah. Therefore what's the difference is we will invest significantly into the launch. Most people won't. And we are talking significant investment because you've got to deliver the buyers, right? You also need time. You can't just launch it in 6 months. You need a good 18 months to launch. And you need dedicated resource. Yeah, that's what most people go wrong with. Yeah, is they try to launch from the existing team and they do it on the side. Maybe it works, but it'll never work for shows like Shop Talk.
Well, this is why you have a separate division that is
Separate division.
responsible for this.
Separate division. And then they helped to get it off the ground. Of course, Katie's got huge experience in terms of how to always work with the leader of that brand. But then as they get it off the ground after 1 or 2 years, it then folds back into the main division that it came from. So effectively, that you can call it an incubator if you want to, but it's really a division whose sole purpose is to invest well, to treat the brand with enormous amounts of respect and the customer set, but to get it with a certain amount of energy, which is very hard to do as launching, is to get it off the ground to scale. Then it goes back into the division.
Has there been an example where a geo adaptation didn't work and you had to stop doing it?
Not stop. We had to redo it. So we launched recently, or not recently, it was about 4 years ago. When we brought Shop Talk Europe, we brought that to London. That was the first. So Shop Talk Europe's first year was in London.
Okay.
And that was a huge mistake.
Why?
Because everything. I mean, first of all, tube strike, train strike, Queen Jubilee. So it was very difficult for people to get to it. And actually, the thing that we learned a lot from is you cannot do them in capital cities, right? Because for one way or another, most people have offices in London. So they pop in and they pop out, right? That works fine for a trade fair. It doesn't work for these type of events. So the large scale ecosystem event, what you want is anybody that's participating in that event to be fully present for the full 3 days. At a trade fair, it's different. You pop in, you pop out. It's a completely different level of person that's coming. But so therefore, it's actually very difficult to make those type of events work in a capital city. So no, it didn't work. But then that's when the power of the brand, and they gave us another chance. And we said, okay, well, give us another chance because there is clearly a market for this. And we brought it to Barcelona, and it's worked unbelievably well since.
So with that in mind, you would never do an event in New York?
Very rarely.
Because we could all just leave and go to our office.
And you pop out.
So what are your favorite places to do events in the States?
Well, we do them in lots of places. So we do Vegas. I mean, that's the main hub. Miami is becoming bigger for us. The inside outside. So possible. I've got to give them incredible credit, right? The team, both Christian, who co-founded the show, but also working with MMA, which is the association. They launched it in Miami. Very brave. They did an inside outside. So it's in the Fontainebleau Hotel. Now it's Fontainebleau, Eden Rock, and the meetings is all on the beach. It's really cool.
Yeah,
that
unless it
format
rains.
I know. But that format has gone down really well. It's a bit different.
Yeah.
So now we're doing 2 or 3 events there in Miami. Nashville, love Nashville. We do Shop Talk Fall is there this year. Vive is there. Vive is the other healthcare event. San Diego, we run ASU GSV. We do a lot of different places, but we try to stick away from the big cities. It's hard to make it work.
Is there a ceiling or like a point where geo adaptation doesn't work? Like if you've got Shop Talk in Vegas and then you've got it in Europe and now you've got Lux, like is there a point in which you just can't do anymore?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And the answer is you're absolutely right, right? So these ecosystems have to have scale, otherwise they don't work.
Right.
So therefore you can do it in America, of course, Europe, of course, Middle East you can do, Asia you can do, and then the only other place you might do, depending on the sector, is Latin America. But that's it. Then you pretty much stop.
And then it's just to find a new brand.
Yeah, but those are, if you dominate, I mean, those geographies, it's more than enough. You could argue, should you do one in China? But then it's unlikely. It just depends. It depends on the end market.
You start to get more domestic again.
Exactly.
Which you ran away from.
Yeah.
Which, all right. So you've got the Ascend 30, the strategy is over 800 million in revenue, over 200 million in EBITDA. I'm sort of saying those numbers. You've sort of nodded along with me.
It is higher than those.
It is higher than those. All right. So what's the actual numbers? What do you want to do?
No, because we were very blunt with Go 27. Our aim is to get to 300 million EBITDA.
300 million EBITDA.
And just shy of 900 million turnover.
Just shy of 900. I mean, look, that makes you one of the largest events brands in the world.
I don't really think of it like that. I think about creating value. It's also about building something that's just it's different. We'll never run the most events. I doubt we'll ever be the biggest. I'm not that interested in being the biggest. We do want to be the best. We want to be, but that all comes with it. But it's just if we are one of the biggest, we're one of the biggest. I mean, it is what it is.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
All right. So along Ascend 30, you've rebuilt the org. 5
Yes.
divisions. You
Yes.
brought on Elizabeth Deeming.
Yeah.
She was at the company, left to
Yeah.
be CEO at MVF. And now she's back as your global president.
Yes.
Talk about the new structure.
Well, it's Ascend 30 is all about, I mean, with no pun intended, it's all about ascending, right? So it's all about effectively, the reason why, going back a step, the reason why we do these plans is really for alignment is one, which is unbelievably critical, right? And the second is focus, right? That's why we do these things. Yeah. Why do I say that? Because obviously you want alignment with your shareholders, but you also want alignment all across your senior leadership, right? This is the direction. Do you all believe in it? Do you all agree with it? Great. That's the direction. Then the focus is so important. This is what I've always found is, with our type of business, and this is not just us, it's anybody in our sector, there are so many different directions you can go in. Yeah. This show can do this. You could do that. You could do this. So many different, there's always new ideas. I love that about our business, right? But it also means it's about focus, right? You gotta focus. Yeah. Or if you're going to do something new, what are you going to give up, right? So that's why we do these plans, is to have focus, is to really drill down and focus on what we're actually going to want to achieve over the next 3 to 5 years. And then therefore, the scale in which that we're going for basically means that, the structure that we have today, or before today, for Go 27 was absolutely right to do Go 27, but now our aspirations are much greater, right? We also have to move much faster. We also are going to be absorbing more M&A, right? So so therefore, that's why we're evolving the business and the leadership structure too. And on top of it, what's very important, what happens when you get certain scale is all the things that you wanted to ensure that you're not going to do. If you're not careful, it all starts to come back. The single biggest thing we do not want to come back is silos. And that's hard to do when you start to get of a certain scale. That's why we have a global president, and that's why Elizabeth's come in. She's come in to drive, to basically make Ascend 30. That's her role, is to make it a reality. But we want one direction for the whole company, not just some coming to me and some coming to this person. We're a bigger business. And Elizabeth has got unbelievable skills, not only what she learned originally with us, but also then at Future and then at MVF, that she can apply into the business. So she becomes the global president. We then have, what we used to have was 2 P&L divisions. It's now 5. Again, to show it, to reflect the scale and the ambition of each one of those businesses, divisions. So we still have Julie Driscoll that runs what's called New Next Gen. She runs a whole host of different shows. She also steps up to becoming the chief revenue officer for the company, ensuring that the best practice of sales is systematic across the whole business. That's really important. Lisa Milburn, who used to run Global Brands, which was a lot of the newer acquisitions that we made, she's now taking on a division that is only for M&A, meaning the earnouts within the M&A, and she'll run all the best practice into those type of events. Again, because that's going to be a big part of our value creation plan. We then have Rich Scarfa, who runs all the healthcare events. So he moves up. He was within health. He was already running the shows. Now he's the president of health. We have Katie Fryatt, who runs the global ventures. So that's one. And then finally, we have what we call connected commerce. That's Zia Widger. And she runs the events that are connected commerce, which is all the retail, the shop talk, grocery shop. When possible finishes its earnout, that will come in, and also manifest, that also comes in, because those are really connected. The customer set is incredible how much that's connected, as well as a lot of the speakers.
So global president, it's big title, basically kind of manages those 5 divisions.
Yeah, she's basically running the day-to-day operations, ensuring the best practices across all of them, and that the P&L comes through her as well. Yeah.
What is your job now? What do you
Talk
do?
to you.
Talk to me, right? Just come on podcast all day.
Yeah.
But what now that because you were managing all that, now you've got someone who kind of can take the day-to-day off of your back.
Yeah.
So what does this unlock for you to be able to do as CEO?
Look, the reality is that, again, scale, right? We're of such a scale that one person can't do everything, and then I would have become the bottleneck for the whole
Mhm.
group. I mean, that's the problem. We have to to step up in every. That's why we're calling it Ascend 30. It's all about ascending up. Elizabeth's skill set will honestly dramatically improve the business as we get bigger. No, for me, it's much more spending time on obviously the M&A. I spend a huge amount of time with the founders. Um, I'd like to believe I was one myself, so I actually understand the
Mhm.
mentality. My dad certainly was one. So how to bring them on board, how to talk to them, how to encourage them to choose us as the right home and not somewhere else. I spend a lot of time on the products, the shows themselves, as in just where strategically are they going. I really enjoy that. But the rest is really ultimately to support the business and to drive it, and of course talk to customers as much as I can. But it's really about the future of the business. Where are we going, and in particular M&A, and a lot of it also spend time on the launches.
One of the divisions is to some extent focused on integration
hmm
of M&A.
hmm
Why does that need to be its own division?
That's a really good. Okay, so my experience of this of the sector, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just different. It's a lot of people buy events and then for all intents and purposes leave them as a standalone.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's very attractive for both sides to a degree. Yeah, um, we don't. We're operators. I'm an operator. We're all operators. We're not consolidators. I'm no interest in just having lots and lots of things and everybody is runs their own business. We don't do that, right? We're operators. So what we're looking at is the verticals that we talked about. But when these amazing brands come in, they're coming to us, one, because you would hope that we're the right home. We know how to sustain and grow these type of brands. We know how to bring them to other markets. But what they're also interested in is the best practice, right? Meaning, you know how many different types of meeting programs there are?
Right.
You know, how do you even start and not make disastrous mistakes? It's not easy. The software is actually broadly the simple bit. The hard bit is what's the proposition? How do you make it work
Mhm.
within your ecosystem when they've never done it before? So that's just one example. How do you take Possible, which is a spectacular new event? How do you bring it to Europe and not completely destroy it? Right? That's a skill set. That's why that division is for the earn-out period, where the founder will come in advance of actually doing the deal. They'll actually work out with our people and with Lisa and our strategy team what are the best practices that they're interested in, what makes sense in the first year or two or whatever, however long the earnout is, that should go into that event. And then Lisa's role is to help support that founder with those sorts of best practices. Um, and we find that that means, again, it's all about focus, right? It's so hard to do that when you're also running all these big shows. So that's what this division is. It's effectively a specialist in helping support the founders throughout the earn out, and then it will go into, depending on what the event is, it will go into another division once it's past its earn out phase.
So M&A is a big part of the business. 40% of the growth is going to come from M&A.
Yeah.
2024, you bought Health for all in about $173 million. You bought Possible the same year. And these are all in company's house docs. So it's not saying anything
Yeah.
that's Possible for 16.4, which looking back could wind up being an unbelievable steal because, if it does become the can of America, that's going to be a pretty nice outcome for you guys. When you're the one writing the check,
Mhm.
are you purely valuing the business on the financials, or are you willing to pay more than perhaps industry standard because it is the show? Like, talk a little bit
Okay.
about what goes into that and the conviction you have to pay perhaps more than what others might.
I, I probably would say we don't actually pay more than others will.
Okay.
However, what we give them is, again, it depends on the show, it depends on the founder. Every deal is different. Okay. And that I think actually is one of the attractions of doing stuff with us is we don't have a cook. That's the one bit we won't have a best practice for, right? We're pretty open minded,
Mhm.
and we're very founder. We think very carefully what the founder wants, and it doesn't actually match with what we want to do. And if it doesn't, we won't do a deal. Like we won't do a lot of deals, right? But when it does match, then it's very attractive for them to do a deal with us. So I don't actually think we pay more. I think What we will do, though, is that if it is an earnout, they will benefit enormously from our best practice, and therefore they will make more money with us than they will somewhere else. That's for sure.
Mhm.
But the upfront is probably about the same what everybody else would do. It's more what happens over 1 to 2 years.
Right.
That's that they will. I mean, they will. They'll make more money with us,
And
right?
is that the typical earnout for you guys, like 1, 2
Yeah,
years?
yeah, 1 to 2 years, sometimes three. It just depends on the product. It depends how young the show is. It depends the founder, what did they want, right? A lot of founders might not want to do it for 3 years. It just depends, right? So Possible was a 3 year. It's over next year. They earn out,
Yeah, yeah.
and they benefited. So the price may sound low at the upfront, but the show was tiny then,
Yeah.
right? But they still have an earnout, so they're going to do. They will by the end of the earnout, they would have done far better than they would have if they had kept it.
Mhm.
They wouldn't have been able to scale it to the way that we've been able to. And that was one of the reasons why MMA wanted to do the deal. I mean, they came to Shop Talk. They spent a lot of time with us. They understood how the meetings worked, what didn't work. The strategy. They really bought into what we could do with the brand, um, and and that's why they did it. So actually, they'll do better.
When you think about earnouts, but you also think about centralized services,
Mhm.
as a founder, I control the entirety of AMO,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah,
get to decide everything.
yeah,
But if I sell to you,
yeah.
which you would never buy AMO in a trillion freaking years, but let's say I sell to you, you're going to want to make centralized changes that I might
Mhm.
believe could impact the earnout.
Yeah.
How do you balance those tensions?
So we, as much as is physically possible, we will actually agree it before we do the deal.
Okay.
So they do. They sit with our strategy team. They'll sit with Lisa now, and they will go through literally every single service. And they'll say, right, for example, the meetings program. There is actually quite a big investment in that. They'll say we're not interested, or yeah we are, and then we'll maybe restructure the deal slightly to allow us to do it. There's always we'll look, like I said, we'll look at everything a little bit differently on each deal. But that's how they do it. Like they'll never be surprised, put it
Mhm.
that way, right? We don't buy something and then it's 6 months later, it's like, oh, sorry, we didn't tell you about this extra cost of $1 million of
Right.
central stuff. That will never happen.
So, what are you've said that there are there are acquisitions you've walked away from
Yeah,
because you and the founder could not get aligned.
yeah.
What are for founders who might be thinking about one day potentially selling to you guys?
hmm
What are the things that would scare you away from a founder?
If they wanted to do a deal and be left alone,
Mhm.
meaning, which does happen a lot, right? A lot of times a founder just wants to realize some capital, and quite right. They've risked so much for so long. They just want to put away a little bit of money, but they want to run it completely independently and they want to do what they want, which, by the way, is a completely valid thing to do, right? But then we'll say, we're not the right people, right? You really should go to XXXXX, right? And they're very good companies, by the way, but we just don't do that, right? We're very interested in can we help support the growth of this particular product in a particular way. Yeah. And again, that's what I mean. I've learned the hard way, right? You do this up front, don't do this afterwards. Yeah. Um, so that's what I would say.
So when you
So
bought,
so therefore, coming back, sorry, to
yeah,
answer your question, the founder, if they want to come to Hive or vice versa, if we're the right home for them is the better question, then they have to want what we are able to help them with in terms of the brand and how to bring it to other markets, or sorry, how to grow their particular brand and then bring it to other markets. They have to want that. If they don't want that, but look at our track record of what we've been able to do in the last 3
yeah.
years. Those founders, they care so deeply about what they've created. Of course, the money is important. Okay. And frankly, I'd hope that they are making more with us in the end than anywhere else. But they also want it to go the right home, right? So either they care so deeply about the particular ecosystem or the community that they're involved with. Look, you got two types of founders, right? You got one, which is the ones who are serial launchers of
Mhm.
new things, and therefore they want the right home so that can keep their track record going. That when they do the next one, they can say, "Look how well the thing I sold to them is still doing great," right?
Right.
And or it's somebody who's deeply, deeply connected to that community that they don't want to sell it to somebody that might then affect their stand. Well, quite correctly, they don't want somebody to affect that community that served them so well. So if you look at one of the founders, Salome, that did, I think she was interviewed by you guys
Yes.
at one point for behavioral health tech. Oh my God, is she connected to that community?
Right.
Right? She was so careful about who she did a deal with. That was actually more important than even the money, right? So you would hope that that's worked out well. It's doing very well. She's very much part of the business and will be for years to come. So that's the way I would say.
So Health had its first show in 2018. You bought 2024.
Yeah.
Possible had its first show in 2023. You bought in 2024. So they barely had done
Yeah,
two
that's true.
before you bought them. How do you think about time and market? What, like, buying Health, that was a bit more of a mature show,
That
whereas
was a bit more.
Possible was still pretty early stages.
Yeah.
What let you take a swing on a show with only two versions
That's a
behind
good
it?
question. So, well, we spent a lot of time understanding the sector. Did Possible have all the right characteristics in order to get to a certain scale? But sometimes it's actually like we like buying them early because then we can help to affect its growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? So sometimes the challenge is if you buy something that's been multiple years in the market, they have certain habits that are quite hard to unwind,
Right.
right? So for example, putting in a meetings program in a more mature event it's not easy. Yeah, a lot of people think it looks so easy. It's actually really hard to do. So putting in the meetings program in Possible, for example, actually was pretty good because it was already in its third year. They had a lot of momentum. We trialed it. We didn't just do shock and awe in 1 year. We had enough time to trial it, and then this year was the first year of the big meetings, and it worked very well. So it just depends. It's all about the end market and have they captured enough to believe that trajectory will continue. And Possible had all the right characteristics
So
and a
you're
good founder and good co-founders. MMA hugely supportive, very enormous alignment. So that made it relatively straightforward to go for it.
so you're a founder.
Hmm.
You've launched a number of shows.
Yeah.
Hive doesn't actually launch
No.
net new brands.
No.
But you have all the DNA, all the makeup of, what makes a great show a great show. You have your methodology for picking super verticals. You have all of that, but you don't launch new shows. Why?
We don't and we won't because two reasons. I actually think our skill set is doing what we're already doing, and I would like to believe we're very good at it, right? But we're not greenfield launchers. Greenfield, it's ultimately we are still our corporate, right? Even if we have got quite a lot of entrepreneurials and within the business, we are still a corporate entity. To launch into a brand new sector with no track record, you need something that we don't have, and we're honest about it. But we'll back people. So we'll back if we have now a wonderful roster of entrepreneurs that have sold us businesses or sold us events that we're very open to backing them if they want to go into a new sector. It's a different skill set. We don't have it.
So you would make the equivalent of like a venture investment in.
Yeah.
Interesting. And
Yeah,
then
for sure.
Have you done that?
No, but we're in discussion too.
I look forward to seeing what that is.
No, but that makes a lot of sense because you need a certain amount of freedom. You can't be, in a corporate environment, it's very, very, very difficult to launch, right? Because the scale of the launch, right? This isn't like $500,000 that you're taking. I mean, you're putting millions behind these things. Right. To do a greenfield launch, you need a lot, or to do it to get it to a certain scale. That's what I believe. We don't have the skill set for that.
Are there super verticals that you really want to expand into?
Yes. I won't tell you which ones.
You won't tell me. You won't tell me. Can you give broad level sector?
No. Well, because then it's just too. No. Look, I think I think you can see from our track record of the type of verticals that we're going into. I mean, let's be honest. There's no shortage of super verticals. We just have to find it, but it is quite hard to find the right mix of super vertical with the right product, right, or the right event. But there are new super verticals that we're interested in.
Are you seeing any slowness for new, like founder-led, high-quality events? Like in the media space, I've been a little concerned about how there were a lot of founders like 10, 15 years ago, but there aren't as many founders today trying to build media companies. They might be creators who are just trying to like do one-off things themselves. In the event space, are you finding that there are still plenty of founders who are launching net new shows that fit the profile of what you're looking for?
On the whole, yes. Yes, I would say. And I think every year there's new. Look, it's a wonderful sector that we're in because it's incredibly entrepreneurial. Um, and I think that look, our pipeline is really interesting. But again, our the way we look at M&A is it's not only super verticals, right? So we will look for a super vertical. That's one part of our M&A. The second part of our M&A is to go deeper into a super vertical. So, for example, behavioral health tech
Mhm.
made sense, right? We're already in health tech. Here's this incredible new launch that's been happening. It was a very young show. I think it was in its second or third year when Salome joined us. Um, so that we'll continue to do, and now we'll look at the what we were talking about before, like year-round engagement type of products. Do we launch ourselves, or is there already something already being done in the market, like Virtuosity League, um, that or like HGAN for brokerage, that's already out there that we can bring in that then becomes our capability, or just advances us faster, right? So our M&A strategy is sort of three-pronged. So it's not just super verticals, but I think there's a lot of great new events happening all the time. Whether the right ones is a different story, but
Well,
yeah.
that's true. So I guess when you look at, if we look at like the healthcare
Hmm.
division, right? You've got health, you've got behavioral tech, you've got, was it Five?
Yeah, Vive.
Vive. So, you said something right now where you said there are more shows you could theoretically have within healthcare,
Yeah.
but scale is important.
Yes.
How do you, as the CEO of Hive, define scale?
Does it capture okay, so it can be scale within a niche, so behavioral health tech,
Right.
right? It is a niche sector within healthcare, but it is clearly the main event of its kind. It's where the people will put the vast majority of their budget for that niche sector, they'll put towards. Do they get the right level of stardust? Do they get the right seniority coming to that event? So, but that's not the scale of a health, for example. Health
Right.
is obviously much bigger because it's the all-encompassing ecosystem event. So I think that's the way we would look at it. It's like, look, we're very interested in the subsectors, but it just has to have the right level of seniority and the right runway of which it can continue to grow, and not just be this small little thing on the side. Does-
So, but I guess, to think about it from a different perspective, are we talking the show needs to have for gold dust of 1,000 people, 10,000 people? Is
It's
it
about it's about the ratio. Look, of course, it has to be a certain size.
right?
Okay, so it's a certain number of people. It has to be a certain revenue or potential to be a certain revenue over a period of time.
Which
All of those things match up.
which you would say is what is the certain revenue you would want it to get
Just
to?
depends. Just depends.
Depends on the vertical.
Just depends on the vertical.
Is there
But
a s-
we're not going to run. We're not going to buy a show that's like $500,000. I mean, it's just the scale's so small.
right?
Yeah. So it is in a certain. It has to be of a certain size, I would say.
So the benefit of being in the event space is with this existential fear about AI, investors are
Mm,
paying a lot of attention to it.
yes.
And there is this belief that events are sort of not affected
Mm.
by AI. Where does AI actually threaten Hive? Is there, a negative side for Hive from this rise of AI technology?
It's a really good question. And the answer is I don't know. Okay. So we think about this a lot. The reason why I think everybody's excited, or excited is the wrong word, but the reason why everybody's talking about events with AI is because the impact on AI is obviously is to our customers, right? So there is a new momentum, and this will last for many years to come, of how AI will impact each individual industry sector, right? Not just for learning, but for networking, for understanding, for how do they rethink their strategies. Investment. There's a lot of obviously AI companies that are coming in, but also how do other software companies match it? So there's a lot of interest and need for companies to get together to work all this through. And that's, this is years. I mean, this is going to last for years. So I think it's the impact of what AI will have on our customers, why people are so excited, in particular about face to face, and the obvious, which is face to face is just becoming more important, right? So if you look at all digital marketing, for example, right, every single study will show there is just so much noise now, right? What channel do you use to promote your particular product to try and get some type of return
Mhm.
to drive sales, right? This is why possible, the whole marketing, CMOs, this is like the thing that they think about the most is that digital marketing, the penetrations, it's getting worse, right? That's why there's more money going into face-to-face, because it's proven to do better. That's why these private equity groups, that's why people are getting more excited about face-to-face, is that this is a proven medium that is delivering a much better return than what was digital marketing. Yeah. Then the AI impact is all the things I just said. So if you add all those things up, then it makes this sector very interesting. Yeah. And plus the stuff that I said to you before about remote working and hybrid working. How do people get together? How do they meet? The physical interaction, people want it. All of that, add every single thing. That's what's made our world interesting again for finance, private equity or not.
You gave an interview to The Drum at some point in the past couple of years and said that it's very hard to be a public company in London if you're not worth at least 2 billion pounds.
Yes, I agree.
The next time Hive trades, you will be worth more than 2 billion pounds if Ascend 30 works.
Yeah.
I just think
No,
the
you're
numbers.
absolutely right.
Is a public offering a possible path, or for Hive again? Like, do you see yourself taking that path, or is that not something you think about? Like, talk to me about that.
I think we're very careful about how the position of the company allows us to have multiple routes for the next turn, of which public company is absolutely potentially one of them. But it's really up to also the shareholders. I mean, it's not really, we're a part of the discussion, but it's really the shareholders' decision. But it's but the answer is yes. IPO is perfectly logical, one of the potential exits for the return. And that would be both either in America or in England. I mean, it doesn't have to be in the UK. Or 65 to 70% of our business is now America. And that ratio, yes, we'll do more geo adaptations, but it'll never be less than 60%. I'll be amazed. Yeah.
Before we end, I want to talk a little bit about the industry at large, right? So over 6 weeks, Closer Still sold, Apollo bought Emerald and QuestX, and actually earlier this week named Paul Miller as the CEO of that combined entity.
Yep.
You traded we're talking probably close to $5 billion plus in like 5 weeks, 4 weeks? I don't even know. That's a lot of fresh powder in the market now, right? After a period of time where nothing was going on.
Yep.
As you are no doubt looking at a pipeline of M&A deals right now, they are likely looking at them.
Yep.
Everyone's looking at the same stuff potentially. How do you think that affects your strategy for M&A? Does it at all? Do you expect to have to pay more? Like, talk about that.
There's definitely a lot of fresh powder. There are definitely a lot more eyes looking at a lot of things, for sure. But I don't think it changes much for us, because the founders are either going to want to do it with us or they're not.
Right.
Like, we're quite binary. Yeah. If they want this is going to sound arrogant.
It's okay.
No, but if they want the right home for a particular type of brand, you are only going to sell it to us. And if you're not, then you're probably not the right people for us. It's just, there is a reason why Health came to us, the reason why ASU GSV came to us, there's a reason why Manifest came to us. Granted, we went to them too, but they chose us over others. And it's not because we offered more money. Yeah. It might have been that it overall could make more, but it certainly wasn't because they were going to make more money. I mean, I'm sure you've talked to John White, talk to them. They'll tell you, right? All of them, those founders. They didn't choose us because we were offering the most. Yeah. They chose us because they believed that we were the right home for their event. So when you look at it going forward, I look at it exactly the same lens as I did before, right? So I don't know if it's going to drive multiples up. I don't know. I don't think so. Because in the end, you still have to have a return. Private equity are remarkably disciplined. They don't overpay for things, right? Most private equity are broadly risk adverse. It's not what most people think it is. So there has to be the right financial dynamics for whatever they buy. So I'm not I don't see this as, suddenly everybody's looking at it and multiples will go through the roof. I don't see that.
I want to end with the same 2 questions I ask every operator who comes on the show. First, for operators trying to figure out where to place their bets right now, what is one thing you would tell them to focus on?
As in what industry sector, or what?
No. For running their business.
Cash.
Cash
is king. Cash flow is everything. The best ideas sometimes don't come through because they didn't have enough cash to see it through. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're creating something from scratch, make sure you've got enough money to see through your idea.
And the second question is, what is something in your life right now that you are absolutely obsessed with?
What, apart from Hive?
Apart from Hive.
I don't know. The vast majority of my life is Hive and or my two boys.
I was
Um,
waiting for you to say like some football club or something.
no, my son plays football.
Well, there you go.
Well, yeah,
Well,
well,
no, he
both
plays
of them used to
soccer.
play. Exactly. Thank you. Both used to play soccer, and now only one of them does. And so yeah, I have enough exposure to football or soccer through them.
Love it.
But no, my world is my wonderful partner, beautiful dog, my boys, and Hive. That's it.
Love it. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on the
No,
show.
it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for this.
Of
It
course.
was fun.
Good.
Thank you.